My Lords, I beg to move Government Amendment 50. This regards notifications where children are placed in temporary accommodation, which all noble lords who spoke to this in committee saw as being a clearly sensible change to make sure such children can receive the right support when they need it. I am pleased to tell noble lords that following extensive cross-government work, the Government has tabled an amendment to introduce a new duty on local housing authorities to notify educational institutions, GP practices and health visiting services when a child is placed in temporary accommodation if consent is provided. This underscores this Government's commitment to break down barriers to opportunity and support all children to have the best life chances. And I would like to particularly thank the noble Lord Russell and my honourable and very good friend, Dame Siobhan McDonough, for raising what the House agreed at committee is a very important issue and engaging the Government constructively on it. This Government amendment builds upon the previous amendments, achieving their intent. Children in temporary accommodation are particularly vulnerable and may need additional support. This notification will alert health and education providers, enabling them to respond appropriately in accordance with existing duties and responsibilities and help to mitigate the harmful impacts of living in temporary accommodation. For example, schools and colleges may wish to consider interventions such as providing pastoral support or practical assistance such as breakfast clubs, after-school activities and homework support. Health services may consider making proactive contact with families in temporary accommodation to ensure they do not experience gaps in healthcare provision. Guidance will follow for local authority housing officers and the public bodies receiving the notifications to ensure that we effectively implement this very important measure. And therefore, I beg to move this amendment.
Amendment proposed before clause 10, insert the new clause, children in temporary accommodation, as printed on the marshalled list.
This is an improved version of Amendment 165, tabled by the noble Lord Russell in committee and supported by the noble Lord Hampton, Baroness Bennett and myself. And we're all very grateful for this very positive response. There are some 41,000 households in temporary accommodation who have been placed out of area. And of that, 26,640 are households with children. So there are a large number of children who will benefit from this. I have three very quick questions for the noble lady. Firstly, when she wound up the debate in committee, she said there were some technical issues that need to be resolved. I think she said there were some operational issues to see how it can work. I assume those have been resolved, and hopefully that there can be some IT solutions which mean that we don't have to do this manually. It'll be done automatically. Secondly, if one looks at 6A and 6B, the bodies who have to be notified that there is a child in their area in temporary accommodation out of area are medical practices in England and schools in England. I just pose the question, those living in Shropshire, for example, who may be placed out of area in Wales, whether there's any duty to notify the Welsh authorities that they have children in temporary accommodation live in their area. And the third and final question is, when will this very helpful amendment actually come into operation? What is the commencement date for it? Having said that, I warmly welcome this initiative.
As the noble Lord Young said, I moved this particular amendment in committee. I also pay tribute to Siobhan McDonough for having pursued this for many years and the way in which she has worked with different parts of government to try and work through the issues. It was always really about the children and not about the problems that government has for doing this. So I will now make a very lengthy peroration about it and simply say thank you.
My Lords, as the noble Lord Young said, I supported and spoke a similar amendment at committee, and again I won't be very long, but I do just want to celebrate that this is a great example of campaigning works. And I want to pay tribute to Just Life, which worked with alongside the Shared Health Foundation for the All-Party Parliamentary Group on temporary accommodation. And I am just going to stress the importance of this. I'm not going to apologise for repeating what are such horrific figures. From 23 to 25, 80 children died while in a temporary accommodation. That was 3% of the total child deaths. And from 2019 to 2024, 74 deaths of children. Temporary accommodation was cited as a factor in those deaths. So having said that, what I also want to really stress, as the Noble Lord Young was hinting at, I think, it's really crucial that this comes into effect as soon as possible so that we could potentially save a life by doing that if GP surgeries and schools know the situation children are in. Of course, much more broadly, we need to get to a situation where we don't have children in temporary accommodation for the long periods of time they are now, but please as soon as possible.
I'd just like to speak from these benches to give heartfelt thanks to the Minister, not only in moving this amendment, but in moving, I haven't dared count the number of amendments my noble friend has tabled, but this is a magnificent example of a Minister and a government listening.
Well done. My Lords, just from these benches, we also warmly welcome the amendment and thank the Government for tabling it.
Thank you to Noble Lords for their thanks and their contributions. Of course, tabling and discussing this amendment has been an important first step. If it is, and I think this goes to the point that Noble Lord Young raised about some of the technical areas where we need to ensure that it works effectively. But we're clear that if it's agreed as part of this bill, which it appears it will be, we will continue to work across departments so that it has the impact the government desires to strengthen information sharing so that educational institutions and health providers are aware where children living in temporary accommodation may require additional or different support. And as I say, alongside the legislation, we will provide guidance for local authority housing officers and relevant education and health bodies to ensure that the duty is well understood by all relevant bodies. And where possible, we will update existing guidance to minimise burdens and support accessibility. I think it is worth saying in response to the Noble Lady Baroness Bennett that, of course, this is one part of the action that this government is taking with respect to temporary accommodation. We have also, through the government's homelessness strategy, published in December, set out a range of measures to support families with children in temporary accommodation, including protecting record levels of investment in homelessness and rough sleeping, eliminating the use of bed and breakfast accommodation for families other than very short-term use in emergencies. By the end of this Parliament, we've set an ambition to cut school days lost for children in temporary accommodation, with a stronger role for pastoral teams to work closely with families in that situation, including preventing unlawful removal from a school's role, making a clear pledge to prevent deaths caused by gaps in healthcare. And to achieve that, there'll be proactive health outreach to families in temporary accommodation, a clinical code to improve data and prevent incidents, and we'll end the practice of discharging newborns into bed and breakfast or other unsuitable housing, and working with the NHS on safe and robust pathways. To be clear as well, in response to the other questions asked by the Noble Lord Young, there is no duty to notify the Welsh within this amendment, but we would be able to look at how we can do that in regulations in the future if needed. And I wholly take his point, given that I come from that part of the country myself, about those areas that are very close to the border and where moves may well be happening across the border. And I will write to Noble Lords to update on the timetable for the implementation of this very important step. And I thank Noble Lords for the welcome that they've given it this evening.
Does this amendment be agreed to? As many as of that opinion will say content. To the contrary, not content. The contents have it.